Hill Street Blues never gave us easy answers. It gave us systems that bent, people who broke, and the relentless weight of trying to do right in a world that rarely rewarded it. That is what made the show feel true. That is also what makes returning to it now feel like uncovering something still unfinished. The precinct stayed frozen in its own time, but the people who breathed life into it did not. Some built entirely new legacies. Some fought private battles the cameras never captured, and some are no longer here. This is Hill Street Blues, then and now. What cuts deepest is not simply how much time has changed them, it is how much of life they already seemed to be carrying back then. Frank Furillo is the precinct captain who holds the entire station together, not through force, but through moral discipline and exhausted resolve. Daniel J. Travanti, born March 7, 1940, was 41 when the series launched in 1981, and he brought Furillo an authority that felt earned rather than declared. Furillo does not lead with swagger, he leads with judgment, absorbing politics, crime, personal fracture, and institutional collapse without letting the station lose its footing. The show gave him few clean victories. It gave him harder choices, and he met each one with a restraint that made every scene feel consequential the moment he entered it. Travanti earned 2 consecutive Primetime Emmy Awards and a Golden Globe for the role, and the series itself became one of television's defining police dramas. He continued working across television and film after the show concluded, though Furillo remained the chapter most permanently tied to his name. In 2026, he is 86. Frank Furillo endures because Daniel J. Travanti made leadership feel like a private kind of suffering, principled, solitary, and unmistakably human. Joyce Davenport does not belong to the precinct, and that distance is precisely where her power lives. As the public defender whose principles constantly collide with the world Furillo operates inside, she serves as the series' most important moral counterweight. Veronica Hamel, born November 20, 1943, was 38 when the show premiered in 1981, and she gave Joyce a combination of intellectual sharpness, emotional depth, and quiet steel that elevated the role far beyond the woman connected to the captain. Joyce fights for the people the system most wants to move past. That commitment creates friction with the precinct at every turn, and especially with Frank, which is exactly what makes their relationship so compelling. She challenges him not only romantically, but morally, on a frequency no one else in the station can reach. Hamel played her with enough warmth to feel human, and enough firmness to feel formidable. After Hill Street Blues, she continued working across television and film, growing steadily more private as the years passed. In 2026, she is 82. Joyce Davenport remains unforgettable because Veronica Hamel made justice feel personal rather than procedural, and that gave the series one of its most enduring emotional arguments. Phil Esterhaus is the heartbeat of Hill Street Blues' early years. The desk sergeant whose calm wisdom and humane authority gave the entire precinct its daily rhythm and its moral center. Michael Conrad, born October 16, 1925, was 56 when the series began in 1981, and what he brought to Esterhaus was rare and irreplaceable, an unshakable steadiness. Phil is not dramatic in a conventional sense. He is observant, measured, quietly funny, and deeply trusted by everyone around him. That trust is the foundation on which each episode is built. When he sends officers out with the words, "Let's be careful out there," it does not land like a catchphrase. It lands like genuine care from someone who understands exactly what they are walking into. Conrad earned 2 Emmy Awards for the performance, and when he died during the run of the series, his absence became one of the earliest moments television audiences truly felt how profoundly a show could grieve one of its own. He died on November 22, 1983, at 58 from cancer. Phil Esterhaus endures because Michael Conrad made authority feel paternal without ever making it soft. And in a show built entirely on pressure, that kind of calm became something close to sacred. Bobby Hill is one of the steadiest moral forces Hill Street Blues ever put on screen. The patrol officer whose decency and quiet professionalism help anchor the series even as the city around him threatens to come completely apart. Michael Warren, born March 5, 1946, was 35 when the show premiered in 1981, and he gave Bobby a calm strength that made him instantly believable as both a good cop and a good man. What makes Bobby endure is that he was never built from shortcuts. He is thoughtful, principled, dependable, and often caught in that painful territory between duty and genuine compassion. His partnership with Andy Renko gave the series one of its richest human dynamics, because Hill's patience and integrity created the perfect tension against Renko's rougher, more combustible nature. Before acting, Warren had already distinguished himself as a standout college basketball player at UCLA, winning 2 NCAA championships alongside Lou Alcindor, later known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That history gave him a natural physical confidence that translated effortlessly to the screen. After Hill Street Blues, he continued working across television, particularly in legal and dramatic series, building a career that extended well beyond the role. In 2026, he is 80. Bobby Hill remains memorable because Michael Warren made quiet integrity feel strong enough to hold its ground in the noise. Andy Renko is one of the precinct's most emotionally transparent officers, a man whose rough exterior barely conceals how deeply he cares about the people and the job around him. Charles Haid, born June 2, 1943, was 38 when the series began in 1981, and he gave Renko a stubborn, combustible energy that felt immediately authentic. Andy can be hard-headed, openly frustrated, and impulsive, but those qualities are precisely what give him weight. He feels genuinely shaped by the daily grind of policing, not polished into an idealized version of it. His partnership with Bobby Hill produced one of the show's most believable friendships, because Renko's sharp edges and Hill's calm steadiness pulled against each other in ways that felt lived in rather than written. After Hill Street Blues, Haid built an impressive second career behind the camera as a television director, contributing to major series including NYPD Blue, ER, and Criminal Minds. In 2026, he is 83. Andy Renko remains memorable because Charles Haid made anger feel genuinely human. And underneath all of that noise, the heart trying to do the right thing was always visible. Mick Belker is Hill Street Blues' most unpredictable force. The undercover detective who appears to be pure chaos until you look closely enough to find the heart buried underneath the growl. Bruce Weitz, born May 27, 1943, was 38 when the series began in 1981, and he gave Belker one of the most indelible presences in the entire precinct, rough, explosive, and seemingly assembled from the city's roughest corners. But that is precisely what makes the role so effective. Beneath the feral energy lies deep loyalty, unexpected tenderness, and an emotional intelligence that surfaces when you least anticipate it. That contrast is what elevated Belker far above comic relief or street cop cliché. Weitz's performance was distinctive enough to earn him an Emmy Award, and even now, decades later, Belker remains one of the show's most instantly recognizable figures. After Hill Street Blues, Weitz continued working across television, film, and voice acting, maintaining a long and varied career while carrying that same unusual intensity forward. In 2026, he is 82. Mick Belker endures because Bruce Weitz made roughness feel human, and it is that hidden humanity that still catches you off guard. Henry Goldblum is the show's quietest conscience, an officer who consistently seems more interested in understanding the people around him than overpowering them. Joe Spano, born July 7, 1946, was 35 when the series began in 1981, and he brought Goldblum a subdued intelligence that made him one of the most genuinely human presences the precinct ever had. Goldblum is not defined by force or ambition. He is patient, socially aware, and guided more by compassion than command, which offered the series a fundamentally different kind of police officer than television had typically placed at the center. In a show saturated with institutional pressure and street-level violence, Goldblum feels like someone actively working to protect the moral soul of the job itself. Spano's understated performance gave the role real and lasting depth. After Hill Street Blues, he built a long and respected career in television, including notable recurring dramatic work on NCIS. In 2026, he is 80 and remains widely regarded as one of television's most dependable character actors. Henry Goldblum endures because Joe Spano made empathy feel like a form of strength, and Hill Street Blues was wise enough to know exactly how much that mattered. Neil Washington is one of the warmest and most grounded detectives Hill Street Blues ever gave us. The kind of officer who balances humor, authority, and street-level realism without sacrificing a single ounce of his humanity. Torian Black, born May 10, 1940, was 41 when the series began in 1981, and he gave Washington a settled confidence that made the character immediately and lastingly likable. Washington's partnership with J.D. LaRue produced one of the show's richest dynamics, because his steadiness, wit, and professionalism played beautifully against LaRue's more volatile and self-destructive energy. Neil is tough when the moment demands it, but he never hardens into blankness. That is exactly what makes him endure. Black brought genuine emotional warmth to the role, and beyond the series, he remained active in acting, theater, and public advocacy, particularly around adoption and family support causes. He died on July 21, 2022, at 82. Neil Washington remains unforgettable because Torian Black made decency feel lived in rather than idealized. And inside a precinct built on stress and compromise, that kind of presence is precisely what people carry with them longest. J.D. LaRue is one of Hill Street Blues' most complicated and fully realized men. The detective whose sharp instincts, easy charm, and quietly unraveling personal life make him impossible to dismiss or reduce to a single dimension. Keel Martin, born July 26, 1944, was 37 when the series began in 1981, and he played LaRue with precisely the kind of effortless charisma that makes watching someone self-destruct feel genuinely painful. LaRue is funny, capable, and often achingly human. But he is also besieged by alcoholism, selfishness, and a life that keeps sliding past his ability to hold it together. What makes the character work is the show's refusal to flatten him into one trait. He can be reckless and still fiercely loyal. He can fail and still be effective. Martin carried all of that with a lived-in sadness that made LaRue far more than another damaged television cop. After the show, he continued acting, but his life was cut devastatingly short. He died on December 28, 1990 at 46 from lung cancer. J.D. LaRue remains unforgettable because Keel Martin made damage look charismatic, and then, slowly and unmistakably, let the true cost of that damage show through. Lucy Bates is one of the women who made Hill Street Blues feel genuinely ahead of its time. The patrol officer who brought toughness, professionalism, and emotional credibility into a precinct still fundamentally shaped by male authority. Betty Thomas, born July 27, 1948, was 33 when the series began in 1981, and she gave Lucy a resilience that made her stand out from the very first episode. Lucy is competent, strong-willed, and consistently forced to earn space in an environment that does not offer it freely. That pressure generates real energy in the role. She is not there to represent an idea, she is there to survive the job, do it with distinction, and make herself impossible to overlook. Thomas played her with a blend of grit and feeling that gave the character genuine staying power. After Hill Street Blues, Thomas reinvented herself in remarkable fashion, moving behind the camera to become a successful director, guiding films including Private Parts and Dr. Dolittle, and building an entirely new legacy separate from acting. She died on March 6, 2025 at 76. Lucy Bates endures because Betty Thomas turned competence into character, and later proved that reinvention could be its own form of triumph. Ray Calitano is one of Hill Street Blues' quieter but most significant pillars. A lieutenant whose professionalism and composed authority helped expand what American television audiences expected to see in positions of police leadership. René Enriquez, born November 24, 1933, was 48 when the series began in 1981, and he gave Calitano a measured command that made the role feel entirely and deeply credible. At a time when Latino representation in authority roles on American television remained genuinely limited, Calitano mattered. He was competent, respected, and emotionally grounded, and the show trusted him to carry institutional responsibility without reducing him to stereotype or spectacle. Enriquez brought dignity and precision to every scene, and those qualities made even quieter moments feel substantial. Outside the series, he continued working steadily across television and film, building a career defined by strong and thoughtful supporting work. He died on March 23, 1990 at 56, from pancreatic cancer. Ray Calitano remains memorable because René Enriquez brought quiet authority to a show full of louder, more volatile personalities. And sometimes, it is exactly that steadiness that stays with you longest after the credits go dark. Joe Coffey is one of Hill Street Blues' younger energies, the patrol officer whose physical presence, straightforward confidence, and uncomplicated loyalty allowed him to hold his own inside a precinct crowded with far more volatile personalities. Ed Marinaro, born March 31, 1950, was 31 when the series began in 1981, and he brought Coffey precisely the kind of athletic ease the role required. That made complete sense because before acting, Marinaro had already established himself as a significant football star, finishing second in the Heisman Trophy race in 1971. On screen, however, Coffey is more than physical presence. He carries a genuine decency and an uncomplicated warmth with his fellow officers that rounds out the character considerably. His dynamic with Lucy Bates added real credibility to the show's patrol-world relationships, and his screen presence consistently suggested someone committed to doing the job honestly. After Hill Street Blues, Marinaro remained active across television and entertainment, balancing acting with his sports legacy and public appearances. In 2026, he is 76. Joe Coffey remains memorable because Ed Marinaro made physical confidence feel grounded rather than flashy, and that restraint gave the role a lasting appeal. Faye Farillo is one of the emotional complications that helps push Hill Street Blues beyond the boundaries of conventional police drama. Barbara Bosson, born November 1, 1939, was 42 when the series began in 1981, and she gave Faye an intensity that transforms personal scenes into genuine moral pressure points. Faye is not simply Frank Farillo's former wife. She is a woman with convictions, grief, frustrations, and her own deeply held sense of what justice should look like in the world. That means she challenges Frank in ways that no badge or rank can deflect. Bosson played her with intelligence and heat, producing a character capable of tenderness in one moment and scorching confrontation in the next. That emotional volatility gave the series real personal stakes that extended far beyond the station house walls. After Hill Street Blues, Bosson continued working in television and remained closely connected to creator Stephen Bochco's dramatic world. She died on February 18, 2023, at 83. Faye Furillo remains memorable because Barbara Bosson made personal conflict feel every bit as consequential as professional conflict. And that was a significant part of what gave the show its distinctive, adult, emotional life. If this journey back into that old precinct stirred something in you, stay with Rewind 1960s for more then and now. For more stories that refuse, no matter how much time passes, to stop haunting.